Ross Chastain got into it with Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin in the NASCAR Cup Series race and took responsibility for the wrecking. And Marc Truex Jr.'s future is currently uncertain for 2023. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. The first story we're going to talk about is pole sitters. Now, this week we made some NASCAR history as Corey Heim, Anthony Alfredo, and Chase Briscoe all earned their first career poles. This is the first time that has happened in NASCAR history where all three of the top series at the racetracks all were able to win the pole. Now, a lot of people are going to say in technicality that Chase Briscoe actually won the pole at Atlanta Motor Speedway, but that one really does not count because if they had the metrics set up the formula, because I remember that qualifying session got rained out on Friday. So that's why they decided to go ahead and say that this was the first time it's happened. Really crazy pole weekend, and congratulations to all three. Of course, Corey Heim ended up winning the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series race, and we got some stuff to talk about from that later in this episode, but great to see that those were the pole sitters that went on to win. I think that's pretty awesome and great, to be honest with you. And now we're going into on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Sonoma Raceway. As it was announced this morning, according to Bob Pockers, that Sonoma has removed the rumble strip coming off of turn number 4 on the left side. The reason that they've done this is so they do not damage the underbody of these cars. If you damage the underbody of these cars, your car basically becomes useless. It's very difficult to do anything in these underbodies of these cars. If you damage them, you really cannot do much. So I think overall it is a great decision that NASCAR has gone ahead and basically removed the rumble strip from the turn 4. I think it will make the race generally a lot better, and I think it's a good decision NASCAR did decide to do that. I think overall it's a good decision, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Glory to God Racing. Now, Marc, who I believe works for Front Stretch, reported some things in regards to Glory to God Racing, what is going on with that team. And according to him, this weekend at Sonoma Raceway, Mason Philippi and Travis McCauley will be piloting the trucks at Sonoma Raceway. With Travis McCauley will drive the 46 or the 47, and Mason Philippi will drive the other truck. Tim Veens is going to be piloting that truck once again at Pocono, and will be racing in some other races as well in 2022. Starting off, we already knew Travis McCauley was going to be in one of the trucks, but Mason Philippi, of course, made his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut this past weekend at Portland, where I believe finished inside the top 30, if I'm not mistaken, which is not too bad for your NASCAR Xfinity Series debut. He will, of course, more likely, unless he's in a 46 truck, he more than likely will have to race his way into the show. Going back to those, I hope those guys do really on their debut. Tim Veens, I expect to struggle. He's probably going to run near the back of the field. It's cool the owner's going to try to race, but I don't expect much from Tim Veens. And that's your update on Glory to God Racing and what they're going to be doing going forward here in the near future. I think that's definitely really interesting, to be honest with you. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Brad Keselowski. Now, Brad Keselowski was in the media center this past week at Worldwide Technology Raceway, and he was talking about the lack of practice qualifying. And he says that he'd like to see NASCAR get back to more practice and qualifying going forward. He's not overall the biggest fan of the lack of practice qualifying there is. I 100% agree with Brad Keselowski here. I think that there is a lack of practice qualifying at the racetrack. There's definitely more than we used to, and we should definitely be happy about that. But there definitely is a lack of practice qualifying currently at the moment. Right now, the way they have it set up is 20 minutes of practice, or unless you're at like one of the race like Gateway, you have 50 minutes. You only have 20 minutes of practice unless you go to a new facility like Gateway this past weekend. And basically, I personally think that there should be 45, at least one happy hour session, 45 minutes, and then one single round of qualifying. Don't need 2 rounds. I think the rounds are stupid, and it's not fair to each side. I don't think it's absolutely fair. I think there definitely have to be changes to the practice qualifying format going forward. I don't know exactly what you can do to fix those problems, but I do believe that there have to be changes to the practice qualifying formats going forward. In my opinion, I think they absolutely do have to make some changes to that going forward. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about a Goodyear tire test coming up. This one is going to be really important because this Goodyear tire test is going to be taking place at Martinsville. And this Goodyear tire test is going to be taking place 2 weeks from tomorrow on June 21st and then June 22nd. There also is going to be an organizational test that's going to take place on August 23rd through August 24th. The reason that they're having this test at Martinsville is because if you watched the Martinsville race earlier this year, this race was absolutely disappointing and absolutely horrendous. There was not a lot of good racing throughout the field. You really couldn't do much, and honestly, it was a big struggle for the drivers at the track. So overall, in my opinion, I think this test, what they're hoping to do is they're planning to make some changes to the cars. They're going to test the rubber. And, of course, it'll be warmer conditions than what we had in March. I think not only do I think the underbody played a factor, the rear diffuser played a factor because it's really difficult to pass, but I also do believe that another major factor that really did play a role in, basically played a major role into it, I believe, is basically that lack of rubber on the track played a factor into that. So I think if they're going to test it, I think the conditions for the Cup race, we come back here in late October, I do think they'll be a little bit better. I don't expect it to be insanely warmer, but we're hoping so they can find a way to get some rubber on the racetrack and make the racing a lot better than we had, because I thought the racing was not the greatest in Martinsville. It was probably so far the worst race of the season. You can make an argument for the Texas All-Star race, but all honesty and all seriousness, I thought the racing was not overall the greatest that we've seen, to be honest with you. And now we're going and on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Austin Dillon. As this weekend at Sonoma Raceway, Austin Dillon is going to drive the 20 for Young's Motorsports this weekend. I believe this will be Austin Dillon's second start of the year at Young's Motorsports. I believe his first start with the team came back at Bristol Dirt, which I don't remember exactly where he finished. I think he had some issues in that race, if I'm not mistaken. And he will be in that truck to help that team in the owner's points. The reason is because their 20 truck is really struggling for owner's points. I think that's the third or fourth week in a row, last past weekend, where they basically have failed to qualify into the Truck Series race. And they're going to need some luck to make it this weekend, as there's going to be a lot of trucks that are going to be qualifying this weekend. And that's why they brought Austin Dillon in. Not only is it good to have a Cup Series veteran in who's looking to get better road course experience, but the team has done really good when it comes to qualifying when they have other drivers from other series. Look at Sheldon Creed, won the pole with this truck earlier this year at Circuit of the Americas. I think having Austin Dillon in the truck is good. If he makes the show, I think he's got a really good shot of being competitive. I think he's got a good shot of getting it done, and I'm very excited to see that Austin Dillon is in 20 this weekend for Young's Motorsports. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Harrison Burton. As Harrison Burton is going to drive the 17 for DJR Racing this weekend at Sonoma. I believe this will be Harrison Burton's second start of the year, as he also raced earlier this year at Bristol Dirt, where he had a decent run in the Truck Series race at Bristol Dirt, but not the greatest start in the world. This, I believe, I'm not sure how many starts Harrison Burton has had here at Sonoma Raceway in the past. I know he raced, I think, into K&N, well, back we used to be called K&N West. I think he made some ARCA West starts back here, but I think especially for the Cup Series, you have to cut him a little bit of slack. He is a rookie, so you cannot blame him for trying to go out there and get some experience. This truck has been capable of winning races throughout the years. We've seen really good competition from this truck, and I do believe that Harrison Burton will be somewhat competitive in this race. I think he'll contend for a top 10. He's done okay at road courses, not great, but he's done okay at road courses, and I think we'll see him do pretty solid this weekend. I hope he has a good run in that 17 truck, help him in the owner's points, and try to see if he can win this weekend. I don't think he's going to win, but we'll see if he does have an opportunity to win. It's going to be tough to do it, but we'll see what happens if he can get it done here this weekend at Sonoma in the Camping World Truck Series. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Detroit Grand Prix. Now, while the NASCAR Cup Series race was going on at Gateway Worldwide Technology Raceway, you also had the Detroit Grand Prix that was going on pretty much at the same time. I actually watched the race this morning, and from what I saw, 0 cautions happened in this race. It became a fuel strategy race where tires mattered a lot. It came down to Will Power versus Alexander Rossi, who we know is going to be going to Arrow McLaren SP in 2023. Will Power at the end had the red tires on, which basically started falling off at the end of the run, while basically Alexander Rossi had the black tires on, the black Firestones on, which were the preferred tires, basically primary tires that were basically being used. Near the end of the race, Will Power had to basically try to get by some lap cars. He really didn't pass it, and Alexander Rossi got within 1 second of winning the race, but he did not have enough time, and Will Power picked up his first victory in the IndyCar season. Now, while the race had no cautions, which I think is the first caution-free race of the 2022 IndyCar season, this race still was really, really solid and really good in my opinion. A lot of strategy to keep everything in, and good battles throughout the field as well. Will Power earned his victory. He started 16th, got out to the front, played good strategy calls throughout. I thought Alexander Rossi was truly going to win this race, but he got it done this weekend. Congratulations to Will Power, and a big win. I believe that's his third or fourth win as he's getting to near the end of his IndyCar career. Congratulations to Will Power on picking up the victory and earning the win here at Detroit, as it is the last race in Belle Isle, of course, because they will be moving away from that track starting in 2023 as they go into the streets of Detroit. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rajah Caruth. As according to multiple reports, first from Jamie Little, she first reported that Rajah is going to make 3 more starts with Glory to God Racing this season. And then Joseph Sergey reported what Vince Walsh said is that he will be running 3 more races with Spire Motorsports this season. Those coming at Bristol, I then believe later this year. I don't remember the other 2 races that he's going to run. I know Bristol's one of them, and there's 2 other races he's going to run with Spire Motorsports. Rajah Caruth was extremely impressive in his Truck Series debut. I thought Rajah Caruth was going to contend for a top 20. He contended for a top 10, and at points was in the top 5 and making some really impressive moves and really impressive passes from what I saw at the track. He's one of the few cars at points to get through traffic, and that 7 truck looked really, really impressive, and he had a really impressive run, ended up finishing 11th. We actually thought Rajah got a top 10 because according to the scoring pylon, he actually finished in the top 10 there. But when they reviewed and officially gave the word out, he ended up finishing 11th. But to nearly finish top 10 in your first ever Truck Series race is really, really impressive. And I'm really excited to see Rajah back in the truck for a few more races. I think Rajah is going to be a star in the series going forward. I think he's with someone that will be good in the series long term. And I'm very excited to see that Rajah is going to make more starts this year. I think he'll do really, really well in the starts. I can see him getting at least a top 10 or 2. And I think that Rajah will be very impressive with Spire Motorsports later this year. He's done a lot of great things. And I'm excited to see Rajah Caruth back behind the truck later this year with Spire Motorsports. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about F1 and ESPN. Now, right now, currently at the moment, when it comes to F1 and ESPN's contract, ESPN and F1 currently, right now, at the moment, have a contract right now that only goes through this year. And they're trying to have negotiations done for 2023. Currently, right now, ESPN has bid around $70 million for F1 media rights, which is more than 10 times the current rate that they currently have. And Netflix and NBC are also apparently in the mix for this deal as well. It really does surprise me that Netflix is in the mix right now, considering the fact that they have the Drive to Survive series, and they're trying to find a way to make it live for fans and trying to get a live TV preference for the fans as well. But ESPN is trying to bid an insane amount of money to get the rights. Now, the big thing right now, a lot of the reasons, rumors in the future about this is because a lot of people don't know if there are going to be commercials available and added onto the coverage or not. And people don't want commercials. Berg Mattis, who is the executive vice president for ESPN, basically said that if there are going to be commercials on the broadcast going forward, he basically said that if they're going to be basically future going forward, they will basically be side by side and we will not have full screen yells. I think one thing that they've done a good job is not having commercials in the broadcast of it staying green, even during when it's a red flag. They have not generally gone to commercials. So I really do hope and pray that they find a way to not have commercials even side by side. I hope they find a way not to, but I think there's a very strong possibility. I think it's a big concern. I think there's a good chance it will happen, that we'll see commercials in the F1 races. It's one of the biggest stories that we're going to be watching. I think the deal is going to have to be done sooner or later because you have to think about this too. Formula 1 does start a little bit later than NASCAR and even IndyCar now, but you got to find a way pretty sooner than later. So we only got about 8 or 9 months till the season starts next year. You got to find a way to get the deal set up for ESPN. And then ESPN, of course, has to worry about getting that NASCAR deal done for their future as well. So we're generally going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that, but it's really interesting to watch and see how much they're bidding for. And I know the rights, they're trying to get some massive, massive rights for that. It's one thing to watch going forward, and we'll wait to see what happens going forward in regards to that. And now we're going on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Ty Gibbs and Jesse Wuji. Now, Jesse Wuji, I want to talk about Jesse Wuji for a minute in a second. So, if you watch NASCAR Xfinity Series race from Portland, you probably saw that Jesse Wuji, who was multiple laps down, was under caution, ran into the back of the leader of the race, Ty Gibbs, and spun him out. Now, Ty Gibbs retained his position, and Jesse Wuji was forced to get a 2-lap penalty and sat on pit road for 2 laps. Jesse Wuji the next morning, on Sunday morning for the Cup race happened, apologized to Ty Gibbs, saying he apologized and apologized to NASCAR for what he absolutely did. Now, I want to talk about Jesse Wuji as a comparative driver and person. Jesse Wuji, as a person, there's no doubt he is an amazing individual. He served our country, he served the Navy, he's an admiral in the Navy, and he's an amazing individual. And what he's done for our country, there's no disservice to it. He did amazing. As a race car driver, though, Jesse Wuji he's just not good. First of all, the fact that Jesse Wuji was 9 seconds behind the car in front of him being Ryan Vargas in the Mike Harmon car, that's horrendous. But not only that, when Kyle Weatherman's in the car, that car is competing for top 20s. Jesse Wuji has not only been, he's been involved in so many mistakes. He was involved in that one wreck at Vegas when he's like 10 laps down behind those guys and causes wrecks. At some point in NASCAR, I understand that Jesse Wuji is good for the sport, but at some point NASCAR is going to have to step in and intervene to what Jesse Wuji is doing, because it's getting to the point where it's getting ridiculous, and I do not entirely understand why Jesse Wuji is out there racing when he's not only causing a lot of wrecks, but he's causing a lot of problems. He is a nice guy and all, but I think personally he should focus on being an owner. He's done a good job doing the ownership side of things. He's got Emmitt Smith working with them, and I think personally, if I'm Jesse Wuji, stop racing and focus on being an owner in our sport. He's been so many commitments. He's had Kyle in that car, and when Kyle's in the car, he does really, really well. In my personal, honest opinion, they absolutely 100% need to put Kyle Weatherman in that car the rest of the year, take Jesse Wuji out, and tell Jesse, hey, you can't be racing out there anymore, because he's caused so many problems this year, and it's absolutely been really, really frustrating to watch. I understand why people are upset about it. I totally get and understand. It's ridiculous that Jesse Wuji has done some of the things he has done, and it's really frustrating overall to watch, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, multiple drivers were being interviewed in regards to the short track package and the flat oval package that we've seen so far this year. And Kyle Busch talked about what Corey LaJoie had been kind of endorsing all week on the Stack and Pennies podcast about the rumor of this upcoming test, which we already talked about, how NASCAR is looking to basically remove the rear diffuser from the cars. Kyle Busch is actually endorsing moving the rear diffusers on his cars. It is actually also at the same time politicking to take the underbody off the bottom of these cars, not just for the flat track package, but also for the whole car in general. Here's something I will agree with Kyle Busch on. I 100% agree that the rear diffuser of these cars and the bottom of these cars needs to go away. Because one thing we've heard from the drivers, especially at these flat tracks, is that once you get behind somebody, it is very, very difficult to pass. And with this being a flat track and a short track, you really cannot find a way around. I know that Kyle Larson said that he's really concerned about Bristol, but you have multiple lanes you can really, really use. So I think you'll have an opportunity to make some passes right there. The issue with these cars is that the rear of the cars, and I think the lack of horsepower does play a factor into that, which I think drivers are politicking for them to get a little more horsepower. The big issue and concern that I have is really, from what I know, is basically is that, because again, one of the big issues is the supply chain. I heard through the grapevine, I was at the tweet up, and Chris Rice, who's the president of Call, said they have 8 cars. We know the inventory is definitely getting into better shape currently at the moment for a lot of teams in the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. But I think one thing that they will probably not be able to change a lot of technicalities until next year. This is something that they're going to have to wait until next year to address. Don't get me wrong, the racing this year has generally been good, but they've got to find a way to fix this short track package. If they can do that, you've got a perfect car. And I think that's why they're having this test, because they got to figure out exactly what's going on. I think this is something that they can absolutely fix. I think this is something that probably will address going forward, and I do hope they can find a way to overall fix it, because I think if we get this fixed, the short track package problem, which I think giving more horsepower, giving better package, more horsepower, and less downforce and all that stuff could be good overall for the sport, and overall great to see that they're considering. I agree with Kyle Busch, there have to be things fixed when it comes to the underbody of these cars. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin. Now, Joey Logano, of course, picked up his second win of 2022 this past weekend at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Before the green flag dropped, and before really all the events began for this past weekend, Joey Logano says that more needs to be done to protect crew members after one of his crew members was clipped by Denny Hamlin, and basically accused Denny Hamlin of intentionally running into his pit crew. Now, Denny Hamlin later responded in a video later to Bob Connors, and Denny Hamlin says that he was unaware he clipped Logano's crew member. Eventually, though, Denny Hamlin went on Twitter later that evening. He basically took responsibility for what happened. He said, "It's my fault. I ran him into the box way too deep and basically ran into his crew member." First of all, I want to address Joey Logano's comments right here. I think Joey Logano does have somewhat of a point right here. They do need to basically take more precautions and make sure no one does get seriously hurt. I personally think they do need to find a way to protect these crew members, because a crew member could get really, really hurt and really be out. Now, Ryan Flores, I believe, was a crew member that was hurt from the incident, or someone else was hurt. I do believe that that crew member is okay and was able to continue on and continue racing over the weekend. But Denny Hamlin also taking responsibility. Denny Hamlin did not intentionally run into Joey Logano's pit crew. It was not intentional. I know that him and Joey Logano have a long history against each other, but Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano needs to understand, Denny Hamlin's not out to get you. He basically just told you that basically I didn't do it on purpose. He didn't absolutely do it on purpose and absolutely tried to hurt you. So I really understand. I understand Joey Logano being frustrated. I do agree that pit crews do need to be protected, but also you guys kind of were putting Daniel Suarez in a bad position, so you kind of ruined some other people's days at the same time as well from where you're from, and you kind of put yourself in that position as well. But I do agree that there needs to be more done about these pit crews. Again, guys need to be more in the pit boxes, and I do agree, and I'm glad that Denny Hamlin took responsibility for it. But I will say, I don't think he intentionally did it. It's not like Denny Hamlin intentionally ran into him. I don't understand where Joe Logano is coming from when he said that Denny Hamlin intentionally ran him, because in my opinion, I don't think he intentionally ran into him. So we'll see if NASCAR tries to address the situation going forward when it comes to this, but it's not like Logano's pit crew got intentionally ran by Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin does have a right to definitely, though, say and apologize, and he took responsibility, which is all he can really do at this point, to be honest with you. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Carson Hocevar. Now, I was at the Camp World Truck Series race at Worldwide Technology Raceway, and near the end of the race, he had a late race restart. Corey Heim, of course, picked up his second career victory, but that's not the main thing that everyone was talking about after the race. So on the last lap of the race, I can't remember who exactly got into the back of Carson Hocevar, but Carson Hocevar was spun going into turn number 1. And Carson Hocevar got T-boned by Tyler Hill, and basically got T-boned into the door, and basically he was complaining, basically said, help, 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 I need help, somebody please help me, I'm in a lot of pain, please help. It took the AMR medical team more than 25 to 30 seconds to get over to Carson Hocevar, which Carson was in a lot of pain. And that's something I want to start off with here. How the hell does it take them that long to get to a guy that's literally injured? First of all, make sure the guy that's actually complaining and yelling for your help, make sure that guy's okay, because he's literally complaining and in a ton of pain. Now, after this, Carson Hocevar did actually get sent to the hospital, and basically said in the lower, basically more updates have been coming out that in the lower extremities that could be absolutely injured. And then Carson last night during the Cup Series race after it was over, basically said that this update coming soon in the future. He's waiting for the medical to be clear, waiting for things to happen. He wants to get back behind a race car, but it's unclear if he'll be back this weekend. After the hit yesterday, getting T-bone on the door, I have a really bad feeling that Carson is going to be out for a few weeks. And honestly, with the damage he got and how hurt he got, it would not shock me if he's out for the rest of the season. I know that Carson wants to go and race again, but I think his health and safety is more important than racing a race car at the moment. So I hope Carson Hocevar is okay. I hope it's nothing too serious, but the fact that we had to get a clinical trials and everything to make sure, that's never a good sign. It really is not a good sign, the fact that Carson Hocevar is basically saying what he did. It's good that Carson at least is alive, for God's sakes. I mean, come on. It's really just, it's good to see that at least Carson is alive from that. But man, it's really concerning to see what happened. And hopefully we don't see any more issues going forward. Hopefully Carson is okay enough to race. But in my opinion, I do not believe Carson Hocevar is going to be well enough to race. It was a very bad wreck and a very scary situation. At least Carson is okay, at least somewhat okay, but honestly, it would not surprise me if Carson Hocevar is not going to be racing here for a little bit, which I think his health and safety is more important than being out of a race car right now. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, if he is okay or not, but I think hopefully Carson Hocevar is okay enough that he can continue racing, but honestly, I don't think Carson Hocevar is going to be good enough to race from how hurt he was. And now we're going into the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Indy Oval. Now, we haven't talked much about this on the channel, but a lot of people, and I've seen this on Twitter a lot as well, a lot of people have been asking for the Indy Oval to be back. And drivers in the media center this past week were asked questions about if racing would be good on the Indy Oval. Now, of course, guys like Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch are definitely begging NASCAR currently right now to go back to the Indy Oval. But there were a few drivers basically saying that no, we should not go back to the Indy Oval, and basically said that the racing would not be as good at the Indy Oval. And the reason is because of the flat track package. The Indy Oval is a flat track, and the reason that a lot of people are concerned about this is because the flat oval races and the flat track races have generally not been really that good. And I absolutely agree. Now, do not get me wrong. I think eventually they are. I think there's a really strong possibility in 2023 that they are going to go back to the Indy Oval. But I personally think that the racing won't be as good as people are saying it is. I understand why people want to go back because of the tradition. The Indy Oval hosted races in NASCAR from 1994 up to 2020 before, of course, last year, the pandemic. And then in 2021 and this year in 2022, going to be racing on the Indy Road Course. Of course, you have to think about the ratings as well. Ratings have definitely been a big issue when it comes to that. But at the same token and same time, I'm not sure if the race will be great. Now, if they do fix by next year, they do go ahead and fix the issues with the Indy, with basically the flat track package, I think maybe you absolutely can think about racing at the Indy Oval and making the racing good. But here's the thing, I'm not really sure that you're going to make the racing, I don't think you're going to make the racing good at the Indy Oval right now until you get that flat track package fixed, which is why they're having those organizational tests on August 23rd and 24th, and of course on June 21st and 22nd, they're going to have those tests at Martinsville, which I think will hopefully help fix some of those issues and some of those problems. So overall, I'm definitely really intrigued to see if they maybe go back to the Indy Oval. Again, I'm thinking more than likely that you're going to be seeing the Indy Oval back in 2023. I've got a really gut feeling they're going to bring it back in 2023. It's one thing, again, we're going to have to wait and see what happens going forward and see what they do. But you've got some drivers that absolutely want it for tradition, and you've got some of the younger crowd like Ryan Blaney and Cristobal saying, no, we do not want the Indy Oval back because they think the racing won't be as good, which right now I absolutely agree. Considering it is a flat oval track, I don't think the racing generally would be really, really as good as it would be on like a regular other track, to be honest and sincere with you. Now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Noah Gragson versus Ty Gibbs. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Portland, you probably saw that Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs got into it in one of the later runs of this race. Near the end of stage number 2 on the restart with around 6 or 7 laps to go in this race, you saw that Noah Gragson and Ty Gibbs were battling really, really hard for the race lead going into turn number 3 and turn number 4. Noah Gragson got a little bit of contact and hit Ty Gibbs a little bit very tightly, and Noah Gragson got to the race lead. Ty Gibbs decides around turn 6 or turn 7 that he is going to go ahead and retaliate against Noah Gragson and nearly takes out Sheldon Creed along the situation by nearly retaliating against Sheldon Creed as well. Now, after the NASCAR Xfinity Series race, Noah Gragson was not a very happy driver with Ty Gibbs and says, "You'll know when I get him back." Now, I want to talk about Ty Gibbs and him as a driver. I think Ty Gibbs is an extremely, really talented driver. But Ty Gibbs is a guy that runs into a lot of people and gets race hard and basically runs into people because he gets race hard. This is not the first instance where Ty Gibbs has gotten to somebody and gotten pissed that he's gotten race hard for a position. Did this earlier to Sam Mayer, and it resulted into a fight. So he's gotten into 2 of the junior motorsports drivers. And not to mention, he's gotten into one of the most popular drivers in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, that being Noah Gragson. Ty Gibbs should know right now that a lot of drivers in the industry want to beat him up and want to beat his ass. And he should know better than basically in the run into people because he got raced hard. I understand Ty Gibbs wants to win races. He's already won 3 races this year, and he's had a solid year. But you're not going to win a championship against a lot of these guys, especially with drivers that are racing for a championship right now. You're not going to win a championship racing like this, Ty. And Ty Gibbs needs to know that he needs to start acting mature. I know Ty Gibbs is only 19 years old, and Noah Gragson's not much older, but he's matured a lot more as a driver compared to Ty Gibbs. And he's shown that maturity. And I think that's why Ty Gibbs in 2023 is probably going to end up continuing to race with Joe Gibbs Racing and Xfinity to get another year of experience to kind of mature and grow as a driver. I think if I'm in the position of Ty Gibbs right now, he needs to lay down a little bit and stop racing like an ass. So that's what he's been doing. He's been racing like a clown these last few weeks. And it's just generally hurt him as a driver. And I genuinely feel like that being there is seeing what Ty Gibbs is doing. Again, I don't think there's any doubt that Ty Gibbs is one of the most talented drivers in the world. But Ty Gibbs, the reason he's even in the ride is because of his last name. If he raced like that in any other car, he'd probably be kicked out and be set up for his stupidity that he's doing. And that's the truth. He's racing like an idiot and racing like a clown. And he generally should know better than to race the way he's being raced. Don't race people and get wrecked. Don't complain if you get raced a little bit hard. Don't run into people and don't wreck people because you deserve it if you're going to get wrecked. You can't do this when you've run into people and bump people. I like Ty Gibbs. Do not get me wrong. But you cannot race like the way you did and expect people to respect you. They're not going to respect you when you race like that. And again, that's why he's staying in Xfinity for another season. Because if you continue to race like that, you're going to get turned and he's going to get dumped at some point by somebody. And I'm going to laugh and I think it's going to be funny. I love Ty Gibbs. But dude, calm down. There's a reason why you're probably one of the most hated drivers in NASCAR, close to Kyle Busch and Joey Logano right now. And there's a reason why you're not a very liked and respected driver currently in NASCAR right now at this moment. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Gateway. As it was officially confirmed this morning, including the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, that, according to also Adam's turn as well, that Gateway is going to once again return to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule in 2023. This is absolutely huge and absolutely amazing, especially after a good race yesterday. I have a video that's going to be coming out talking about my experience from the racetrack tomorrow, which I'll talk about everything from the track. I'll have a vlog coming out for that, but I want to talk about this for a second. The event was absolutely amazing yesterday. There was so much to do there. There was a lot of things you could do, and the track and people being there and the facility and everything. They had 80-something thousand people. Yes, traffic was a major concern, but you had a sold-out crowd, and the St. Louis crowd really came out to this event, and it was one of the largest crowds we've had of the 2022 season, and one of only 4 or 5 races so far, about 15 or 16 races confirmed so far, that have had a sellout crowd. And I think it was larger than some of the other crowds we've seen so far. Larger than Phoenix. It's almost larger than the other crowds like Talladega. I think more people showed up to this race in Talladega, which is kind of nutty. But it's so incredible to see that more people are coming to races. And this track deserves it. When you have that many people at a racetrack, you deserve to be there. And St. Louis is definitely a hot take. And I think a lot of people are going to come back to the racetrack. Now, the racing itself could definitely be a little bit more improved, and I think the car is really the big caveat to that more than anything. I think if they get the car fixed, I think the racing can generally be better, but drivers were really excited being there. Drivers, I think, had a lot of fun being at the racetrack, and generally, there's a reason why people want to come to this racetrack, and just, St. Louis is a great sports town. People were there. People enjoyed it. The energy, the atmosphere, the excitement being there was absolutely phenomenal. And like I mentioned here multiple times, Gateway absolutely deserves to be back on the schedule. Now we get into questions about the future of the Cup Series schedule and what is it going to look like? Because we know that Phoenix is coming back next year. We know Gateway is coming back next year. We know the date of the season finale for Phoenix. We know the date for the Daytona 500. We know that potentially they're looking to try to have a second off weekend, though there's a lot of talk. Maybe there's only going to be one off weekend again. We know that Bristol Dirt is going to be back on the Easter weekend once again. They're going to be back in the spring once again at night, trying to have it on the Easter weekend, which I think will be a little earlier this year. There's also talk about the All-Star race and that being back next year. The question now is, what is the schedule going to look like? Because, again, I think a lot of people are wondering what it is going to look like going into 2023. They're going to have 36 races, of course. We don't know what distribution, what the money will be, but that's one thing we'll have to watch. But congratulations to Gateway on getting a deal. Of course, I believe it is a 3-year deal for Gateway. I believe they'll have it in also 2024, so there's no issues with the track. Will they keep up with the attendance? That's one thing to watch, but I do believe that you're still going to see another sold-out crowd. I definitely want to be back there next year for the next Cup Series race and be there for the next weekend. Absolutely exciting and amazing to see the Gateway is coming back to the schedule. Absolutely well-deserved, and congratulations to Gateway on getting the Cup Series racing once again. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're going to talk about Ross Chastain versus the world and Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott. So, if you watch the NASCAR Cup Series race from Worldwide Technology Raceway, the racing was not probably the biggest thing everybody's talking about in a facility. It was Ross Chastain getting into multiple drivers in the race. Let's start off with Denny Hamlin. So Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin were, I believe, running for around 6th or 7th position, and Ross Chastain got really, really frustrated at Denny Hamlin and basically ran into the back of Denny Hamlin and pretty much wrecked Denny Hamlin, got on the outside wall, I believe broke the tow line on the car, and Denny Hamlin got a lot of damage and had to come back down pit road. During the green flag run, not once, but twice during the green flag run, we saw Denny Hamlin try to get into him and show his displeasure. Denny Hamlin at one point forced Ross Chastain below the line, and then they were having contact going to turn number 1. He actually Denny Hamlin forced Ross Chastain up the racetrack during the green flag run, and he lost a ton of time on Austin Cindric. Later in the race, he got into more drivers in this race. So basically, we saw a wreck fest where Ross caused a massive wreck on turn number 4, where Ross got into the side of Chase Elliott and caused a wreck that triggered a big one that took a lot of cars involved. Harrison Burton, Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, among other drivers. Josh Bleak also was involved in that wreck. and that brought out the caution in this race. Then we saw an incident where basically we saw multiple drivers get into basically between those two. We saw Chase Elliott and then Denny Hamlin basically tag team Ross Chastain on the restart where Chase forced Ross up nearly into the wall. And then Denny Hamlin, he tries to also go after him. So the two guys that went against each other in 2017 in Martinsville were pretty much going after him and basically getting into him. After the race was over, Ross Chastain went to the media, basically says he took responsibility for what happened. They said, I can't believe I drove like that. I drove way over my head today, and I want to apologize to half the field, but words are not going to describe it. My actions showed, and I did not have a good race today, and I absolutely deserve to whatever comes at me. Denny Hamlin did respond to him later, and basically says that when he pays back Chastain, it will be very meaningful. Now, Justin Marks basically eventually responded, basically saying, cannot wait for that to happen. The Denny Hamlin were basically chiming back and forth there. And let's talk about Ross Chastain in regards to him. This is the first race this season where Ross Chastain has been a little bit over his head. And he admits that. He was way over his head in this race, but he was absolutely way over his head in this race. And no, I'm not a big fan of Denny Hamlin. Don't get me wrong. But let me tell you something. Denny Hamlin has a right to absolutely retaliate against Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain was being kind of an idiot in this race. He was absolutely deserves to get called out for. This is really the first race that Ross Chastain really has caused problems. I know people say, well, he shouldn't have done what he done at Coda. That's going for the win. Other than that, he said he's better than that. He's in the Cup Series, and he should definitely know not to be doing what he did in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, because at times he would be way over his head and way over aggressive. And that's one thing I think he's generally done this year, has not been that insanely aggressive and has not been like that. And he took out two drivers competing for the championship in the Cup Series along with him. Of course, Chase Elliott, who is the points leader with his antics with Ross this past race, he is now only 9 points ahead of Kyle Busch, and Chastain, of course, like 18 points behind him there. I love Ross Chastain, do not get me wrong. I love Ross Chastain as a driver, and I think he is a very phenomenal driver and one of the most talented drivers in the Cup Series field. But one thing he's known for is being extremely aggressive. And I think generally this year, he's kind of honed in that aggression this year and has not been as bad about it. But I do think this year, Chastain, he's probably going to learn the hard way, and he's not making friends by being like that. And especially if Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott do make deep runs in the playoffs this year, which is very positive how they're doing in the points. Well, Denny Hamlin, I say, he's got 2 wins, so he'd probably make it somewhere deep and run in the playoffs. But Chase Elliott, of course, man, he's a guy that's probably going to make it far in the playoffs this year, and he's going to have to learn that you can't race like that, and you're going to get a lot of disrespect from the field. I don't want guys just running into each other. I mean, BJ McLeod was complaining about these guys at the racetrack. They said, I'm just tired of this. I don't like that these guys are racing like that. I just think when it comes to Ross Chastain going forward, he's got to learn that you can't race like this because people are not going to like it. Don't get me wrong. I like Ross Chastain. I like Ross Chastain a lot. He's one of my favorite drivers currently in the Cup Series. But I just saw that going on. I'm like, what is going on in this race between these guys? And it made the race more entertaining, I will say, than it absolutely was. And I just think people that if you're in the position of Ross Chastain, gotta be careful. If you get dumped later in the year, you absolutely deserves it. And he knows he absolutely deserves it. And that's one thing. I like that Ross took responsibility. That's one thing. And Ross has taken responsibility for some of his antics on the racetrack in the past. And he just wants to do well. He was upset about it. And I don't blame him for being upset. Now he's just got to go out there and show that, hey, I'm serious about it. And I just can't race like that anymore. He's got to show, you can show the aggression, but don't run into people along the way forward. So that's what made the race more interesting. And we'll see if the more incidents come in the future between those guys. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Martin Truex Jr. Now, this question has been asked pretty much every week or every other week about Martin Truex Jr.'s future. And basically, some people have been saying we shouldn't be talking about this and going into this. But since this was asked by the media this week, Martin Truex Jr. talked about his future. And he says to the media this week that he doesn't know whether he will come back in 2023. He said he thinks about it every day and doesn't know how he will decide. A lot of factors, including quality of life. Financial implications are not as big of a factor as this. He says he should know in a couple weeks what his decision is going to be. Now, the reason that this is being talked about is because Martin Truex Jr. right now only has a contract through the 2022 season. And Martin Truex Jr. is one of the oldest drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series. In fact, Martin Truex Jr. will be turning 42 years of age later this year. In fact, I think in around October, November, or August later this year, is when he's going to be turning 42 years of age. Marc Truex Jr., of course, just completed his 600th NASCAR Cup Series start, and he's been around the Cup Series technically since 2004, and basically been full time since 2006. So he's been in for a very, very long time, and has, I think, 30 or 31 career NASCAR Cup Series victories. When I think about Marc Truex Jr. and his success, he's done absolutely amazing things. But Marc Truex Jr. has been very open about this and talked about that his opinion if he's going to return or not is we're going to come how much he enjoys being in the next-gen car. And for a guy that this could be his last year in the Cup Series right now, the fact he's having a solid year, in fact, he's in the top 5 in points, is actually in the hunt to get the regular season championship right now, despite not winning a race. He's only 30 points outside of the regular season points lead, so it's not like Marc Truex Jr. is struggling this year. Seems like he is, but he really isn't struggling. He's running pretty well, he's getting a lot of points, and he's riding to miss it, but despite not even winning a single race this year, he's got a shot at the regular season championship. But I understand Marc Truex Jr. does decide to retire. Now, do I think he is going to retire? I think there is a very big possibility that he's going to retire. And I think it'll be unfortunate if we lose Marc Truex Jr. I think he's one of the cleanest drivers out on the track right now. In fact, I think he is the cleanest driver. Yes, sometimes he's throwing his whininess, and he got into Eric Almirola yesterday and was really, really pissed about that. But Marc Truex Jr., when he got into Joe Gibbs Racing and went to Furniture Row, Marc Truex Jr. only had 2 career victories. She's shown a lot of pace, has won a lot of great races, has won the championship in 2017, and of course has won the Coke 600 and the Southern 500 as well. But it really be sad if Marc Truex Jr. does decide to retire, but he's had an amazing career, and in my opinion, if he does retire, he absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, the big question is if Marc Truex Jr. does decide to retire from the Cup Series, who takes his ride next year? Ty Gibbs is not an option because Ty Gibbs is going to be in the Xfinity Series. And I know things can change, but I don't think he would be the choice. You got a few options you have right now. You've got guys in your pipeline right now. You've got Brandon Jones, who drives the 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Brandon Jones has been in for quite some time, has been pretty successful in the Xfinity Series this year, is an underdog to win the championship right now, and has shown a lot of progress the last few years, and has been an underdog, and has been with Joe Gibbs Racing in the Xfinity Series since 2018. I think he's definitely an option they're potentially going to be looking at to get in that ride, but I don't think he's the main option. You also have John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter Nemechek right now would like to jump up to the Cup Series, but I don't think, because I thought maybe he'd go to 2311 in that ride, but 2311 currently moment is not planning to expand to the NASCAR, and again, until NASCAR makes some changes to their financial, how they do the finances and how they distribute the money. So they want the change and how the industry does that. So they're not expanding next year. So I think John Hunter would be a great option, but does John Hunter want to go to Joe Gibbs Racing, or does he want to jump up to Xfinity Series? That's a big question right there. You've also got other drivers who can be available, and I think one driver that a lot of people are thinking about is Tyler Reddick, and I think this would be my personal choice, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick, of course, currently drives the number 8 for Richard Childress Racing and is currently in the playoffs, currently by 2 points over Kevin Harvick, who is somehow surprisingly outside the playoffs after a horrendous run at Worldwide Technology Raceway. But I will say this about this, Tyler Reddick, they want to keep him next year to RCR, but I think he's in the same position Kyle Larson was with Chip Ganassi Racing. And I think Tyler Reddick would genuinely be a really good option to move. If you have to move him, I think he'd absolutely be a great option to go ahead and make the move and to be over the team. I think he would have a season like Kyle Larson did. And I'm not sure he'd win more races than Kyle Larson because, again, he has been winless so far, and he is 26 years old. Kyle Larson picked up his first victory, of course, at only 23 or 24. So Reddick has still looking for that first victory. But I think a lot of people are looking at Tyler Reddick to be the next big thing. If he would make the move over to Joe Gibbs Racing, I think he would do a very, very solid job over there. You do also have other drivers in Joe Gibbs Racing's pipeline. You got Trevor Bayne as well. And Trevor Bayne does have a lot of Cup Series experience, and he is the relief driver for Kyle Busch. If Kyle Busch does miss for COVID protocols or whatever, he's going to go in there and substitute, and probably a substitute driver for the Joe Gibbs Racing plant. I would think personally, though, for me, I would go with Tyler Reddick or John Hunter Nemechek if you're going to play Marc Truex Jr. if Truex does decide to retire. I think those are my two options right there. And that is as well, of course, if Tyler Reddick does not pick up the option with RCR, which I think would be a great option. You do also have Noah Grayson, though, who's available. And Noah Grayson, of course, does have Bass Pro Shots backing him. And I think he'd be a great option as well. We know that Noah Grayson wants to make the jump up to the Cup Series. I think he'd be a good option as well to go right there. But truthfully, if Marc Truex Jr. does retire after this year, he's had an amazing career and deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, do I think he will retire? I'm thinking 50-50. I was thinking probably he would return, But I'm thinking more likely he may not return next year. And I think people need to be prepared for that, especially if you're a Marc Truex Jr. fan. You need to be prepared for that possibility of Marc Truex Jr. going into retirement. But if this truly is the last year for Marc Truex Jr., he's had a great career, and he deserves a lot of respect from the peers of the drivers. I know a lot of drivers kind of get frustrated with how Marc Truex Jr. races, and they do take advantage, including guys like Joey Logano and Ross Chastain. But I do think, in all seriousness and in all honesty, I think that he's had a great career. He's a first-ballot Hall of Famer in my eyes, and I think he deserves to be there. So, congratulations. If this is it for Marc Truex Jr., congratulations him on an amazing career. I hope he does return at least for one more season. I think if he got one more year, they would have a great team. Kyle Busch is probably coming back next year. He's got the sponsors hopefully going to be announced in the future. Hopefully, we don't know what it is exactly, but hopefully he'll have a sponsor in the future. But this could be the last season for Marc Truex Jr. in the NASCAR Cup Series. So, anyway, that is it for today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on pages on the list schedule below over that, and comment with your thoughts on today's video. Do you think that Marc Truex Jr. is going to retire after the season or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the situation between Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott? And do you think they will retaliate against him or not? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, I am going to be having a video explaining my experience from the track at Worldwide Technology Raceway. It might be a long video, I'm not entirely sure. I won't have a vlog from it, but you will see a video explaining my trip from Worldwide Technology Gateway. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.